All right, here is my proof for the existence of God. Seems like a lot, so buckle in. It's going to be a journey we're going to be going on together. And this is a logical proof, right? The most certain type of proof there is. You have empirical evidence, then you have mathematical proofs, which are more certain than empirical evidence. And then you have logic, which is more fundamental than science, math put together, because science presupposes math, math presupposes logic. Logic is the foundation. So for something to be logically true, it is the most certain and confident you can be in intellectually, because logic is the foundation of math and science, okay? And this is a logical proof. This is what we're doing. We're going to be logically proving that God exists. Very simple, very straightforward. Let's jump into it. So, start with definitions, because we got to define shit, right? Words mean things, and it matters what they mean, especially in this context, okay? So consciousness, the presence of experience, what it's like to be something. Very simple. And experiencing things. You're experiencing me through this video, you're experiencing YouTube, you're experiencing your experience, I'm experienced talking into the camera about experience, meta experience, lots of consciousness, you get the point. Consciousness is just the presence of experience, the experience of qualities of things, okay? Right? Making love is an experience, going for a walk is an experience, watching this video is an experience, you get the point. Fundamental, very important. That which doesn't derive from something more basic, foundational. So it's the ground. In this room right now, the carpet is fundamental. It's the most fundamental thing because it's what everything else is standing on. It's the most basic thing. Okay? That's it. You can't derive anything beneath it. I guess, within the context of this house, you have the floor beneath it and the floor beneath it, and then you have the actual ground. But in the context of this room, this is what's most fundamental is that ground. And wherever you are, whatever room that is, right, you're going to be standing on some kind of foundation, some kind of ground, whether it's outside or inside. Something that you can't get underneath it. That's what's most fundamental. Strong emergence. X arising or emerging from a base that excludes it. So you have a base that has 0x producing X. Okay? So this seems kind of self-intuitive, kind of obvious. You're like, yeah, no duh. If something doesn't have something, how can it produce that thing if it doesn't have it? This is more common and prevalent in modern academia and modern science and modern thinking than you'd think, and is the main reason why this proof exists, really, is strong emergence, because people conflate strong emergence with its cousin, which is valid, weak emergence. But an example of strong emergence would essentially be that, you have a pizza, you cook a pizza, it's just cheese, sauce, dough, and when you cut the pizza, pepperonis pop out. When you cut the pizza, a baby comes out. And the baby was not in those ingredients. So you put a bunch of ingredients in something, and when you combine those ingredients in a certain way, magically a new thing emerges that wasn't in the base, a new foundational thing. Weak emergence is a perspective shift. Different POVs revealing different aspects of what's always there. So weak emergence would be forest and trees, okay? You're walking through the forest, you notice the trees, you get lifted out by a helicopter, and then eventually it turns into the forest, right? And it's all based on your perspective. It's based off how you're looking at it in that particular time. Or a school of fish. You're looking at a fish, you're looking at the fish's eye, and then you zoom out and you have the school of fish. The school of fish was always there, the forest was always there, you were just noticing the trees, or vice versa. The fish was always there, you were just noticing the gestalt, the combination of it. A weak emergence is just a perspective shift, not something that necessarily strongly emerges, okay? Or you're looking at a statue, you're seeing the back of it, you walk around to the front was always there, you're now seeing it. But just because you didn't see the front before does not mean it did not exist. This is fundamental to something like object permanence, right? Just because the baby can't see the mom's face doesn't mean that she doesn't exist. From the baby's perspective, the mom does not exist. But from the dad and the mom's perspective, she has always existed, right? It's just based off your perspective. So that's weak emergence, which is very valid. God, right? This is important because the whole proof is about God, right? We're proving God exists logically, step by step. So we need to define what God is, because it's not just arbitrary. This is not the Bible God. This is not Yahweh. This is not other forms, Zeus, whatever God you may be thinking of that has been in conventional culture and society. God, the infinite, conscious, intentional, and unified source of all existence, right? The most fundamental thing, okay? God is infinite, it's conscious, it's fundamental, intentional, and unified source of all existence, all experience. Is another way of saying it, okay? And you'll see how we get there. That's the whole point of this proof. You're like, okay, that's cool, but how do you prove this God guy exists, or this God gal? It's both, right? This God thing exists as this genderless matter, non-experiential, dead substance with zero consciousness in it. This is not my definition. This is standard science. This is why we have the hard problem. This is why we're like, consciousness emerges from something. This is why we have these problems, these questions. This is why we have materialists and physicalists who believe that it's only patterns or math, right? You know, there's this people who believe that everything is just math, which is fine. You know, believe what you want to believe. I'm saying no, something deeper than that. Infinity, the totality of all logically coherent possibilities of manifestation, existence, ontological, immortal infinity, not space-time. So when people think of infinity, they think of, oh, infinite numbers or like infinite space, infinite time. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying infinite possibilities that can actually manifest. And they have to abide by these 4 axioms. You will see why. These 4 axioms is what I call the logos. It is logic. For anything to exist as a distinct thing from nothing, for something to be something and not nothing, it must obey these 4 axioms. Without them, it cannot exist as a distinct thing. It is non-manifest in any way, at any level of reality. Okay? So when I say infinity or infinite, I'm saying the totality of all logically coherent possibilities. Logically coherent is defined by these 4 axioms. Transcendental proof. So this is what this is. I'm using a logical transcendental proof. What is a transcendental proof? Essentially, it is a proof where the axioms cannot be refuted or denied without using them. Okay? Sounds kind of weird, but this is why this is the most certain type of proof there is. You cannot escape it, because to even argue against the axioms, to say, actually, I don't really believe in the law of non-contradiction, you have to use the law of non-contradiction to assert something as fundamental with positive content. You have to use the law of non-contradiction. It is embedded in the act of arguing, reasoning, thinking, manifesting, existing itself. All 4 axioms are required. So we'll get to them right now. Because you're probably wondering, maybe I'm just full of shit. maybe I'm just blowing smoke, right? Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass. But trust me. Okay, so axiom 1. Very simple. We're not getting ahead of ourselves. We're taking it one step at a time. So just follow along with me. Take a deep breath and relax as we move through this, okay? So consciousness can't be denied coherently. Or another way of saying this is consciousness exists. That's it, full stop. Axiom 1 is consciousness exists. There is experience. There is something to be like things. You're watching this video, you're experiencing it, okay? That's all I'm saying. We're not getting ahead of ourselves. To deny consciousness exists, you must use consciousness to perform the denial, right? Within the realm of consciousness, within the realm of experience, you can deny consciousness and experience, but that doesn't mean that it's true because you are validating it. Therefore, denial of consciousness existing at all in any capacity is a performative contradiction. All human knowledge has been acquired through consciousness, right? Because acquiring knowledge itself is an experience. Arguing for or against consciousness is an experience. Watching this video right now is an experience. That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying experience is a thing. Consciousness is a thing at some point, period. You'd be surprised. Some people try to argue against it, but then again, that is a performative contradiction, because to argue against experience, you need to use it. Kind of like would be like arguing against life, saying life doesn't exist. There's no such thing as being alive. Okay, well, to argue against being alive, you have to be alive to argue against it, right? That'd be like, or saying, I don't exist. I'm trying to convince you that I don't exist. Well, to try to convince you that I don't exist, I have to exist to do the convincing, okay? So very self-evident, almost overly simplistic, but these axioms, they're foundational. Again, you cannot refute them without using them. That is the whole point. What I really need to hammer into the mind, because it can seem like it's like there's steps being skipped, but we just take it one step at a time. Axiom 2, law of non-contradiction. A is not A. Very simple. You can't have something be its opposite in the same respect. Okay, so 3 cannot be 2. Up cannot be down. Okay, square circle can't exist. Right? Simple. Without this law, no distinction is possible. So if nothing has meaning without meaning the exact opposite of what it is, it can't exist. It can't be distinct, because the way that it is distinct is by it being something and not being something at the same time. Okay? So if someone were to ask you, hey, what color is, or you would ask me, what color is my car? And I say white, not white. I haven't said anything. It's like taking a step forward and taking a step back. You've gone nowhere. Okay? So axiom 1 is experience exists. I'm standing somewhere. I'm experiencing standing and just being around, being a thing. Axiom 2 is you can't take one step back, or sorry, you can't take one step forward and one step back and go anywhere with your argument, with life, with existence. Without distinction, right? Without the law of non-contradiction, there is no truth, claim, existence, knowledge, or experience at all, because there's nothing distinct from anything else. So you have nothing. It's just blah. Not even chaos, not even confusion. It's literally nothing. Even confusion has some level of non-contradiction in it, some form of logical consistency, coherence in it, because you have distinct things that are separate. You just have absolutely nothing, not even black, because black is a thing. Black is not white, right? So to deny this axiom is to use it, right? To make a denial, to say, hey, I disagree with axiom 2. You're not also agreeing with axiom 2. It would be like you're agreeing and not agreeing at the same time, in the same way with axiom 2. Can't do it. You need to use axiom 2 to deny or refute, to say, actually, I don't agree with it. By not agreeing with it, you're taking a stance. You're taking a hard stance saying, I'm not agreeing with it. That's a stance. Law of non-contradiction. Not A. Or A, I agree with it. Cool. Well, you're using it anyway. So even if you agree with it or disagree with it, you're still using it. Again, these are not even my axioms. These are just the fundamental logical rules for anything, again, to be distinct from anything else. It's the foundation of math, the foundation of science, the foundation of manifestation, existence, thought, reason, everything, okay, that we can experience. Axiom 3, no circular grounding. This is related to begging the question, very important in logical deduction and in logical debates and thought, okay? Philosophical debates. An explanation can presuppose what it claims to explain. It's called begging the question. Circular grounding grounds nothing. A cannot ground B, while B is needed to ground A, right? Mutual interactions need a ground. Non-circular grounding must terminate at self-validating primitives whose presence is its own validation, ground that requires no further ground. All right? So the thing about this is, one simple one is, if the only way that you can exist is by giving birth to your mother, you can't exist. Right? There has to be a ground that grounds both of you. Now, you both came from your grandmother, but if the only way your mom exists is by you giving birth to her, and the only way you exist is obviously because you have your mom, she gave birth to you, well, then nothing exists, because that doesn't make any sense. That's impossible. Literally logically impossible. Another example is, imagine you have two people floating in a void with absolutely no gravity, nothing around it. It's just a black void, just two people. Neither of them can ground the other person because there's no ground. You can't hold someone down to there's nothing. There's no ground, right? Back to the stepping analogy. Imagine the first axiom, you're experiencing something, so you have the venue of experience. You're taking one step forward and you're not going back with just axiom 2. Now, axiom 3 is there's an actual ground to stand on. You would just be floating. You can't take any steps because there's nothing there's no friction. There's nothing to step towards on, right? That's axiom 3. So you can't say, oh, well, this thing exists because it gave birth to the thing that it needs to exist. That doesn't make any sense. This is why people say no circular grounding in argumentation or begging the question. A determinate being requires non-circular grounding. Whatever exists is grounded in something that is self-evident and self-validating. This has been, especially in formal systems, which is math, which is even more fundamental than science and empirical evidence. Gödel's incompleteness theorem talks about this. Formal systems like math require some kind of foundation, something that's more fundamental to stand on. So if two people floating in the void, there needs to be something that one of the people can hang on to so they can help ground the other person, or they both are grounded by something, but they both need something foundational. Some people try to argue that, oh, well, you can have like a web of things being interconnected, but even a web, what, right? It needs to be attached to something. It can't just float in the space of the void and do work or exist. It needs to be grounded in something, right, to be established. All right, axiom 4. For anything to exist, it must have positive content that is explanatory work. Subject. For something to exist, it must be determinate. A, this, rather than nothing. This is tied into axiom 2. This rather than that. Determinacy requires exclusive or exclusion, A not A. Exclusion requires positive constraint to exclude everything that it is not. So very simply put, if somebody were to ask, hey, where do you live? And you said, not London. They still do not know where you live. You've not told them anything, really. If you then say, not Chicago, not Bangladesh, not the moon, not the sun. They're like, oh, this is great. I'm glad that you're really enjoying saying where you don't live, but where do you live? Do you live in a house? Do you live with a mouse? With a cat in a hat? Little Dr. Seuss for you, little rhyme. But like, you need to say something, you need to give some positive character. You can't just say something exists. Something can't exist just by not being something. Let's put it that way. Otherwise, you haven't said anything. You're not going to get anything. What do you want for Christmas? I don't want chocolate. All right, thank you for letting me know that you don't want chocolate, but what do you want? Well, I'm glad you asked because I do not want a car. It's like, okay, well, I wasn't going to get you a car anyway. Those are expensive, especially for Christmas. But what do you want? So you need to give something positive for it to exist as a distinct thing. For something to be a distinct thing, it has to have a positive quality. It can't just be a negation. All right. A positive that has no positive character is called a null label. Can't constrain, exclude, or make anything determinate. So you can't even have axiom 2 for A has to have a positive content. Not A is the privation of A. But for this to happen, A has to have some quality that is positive. Therefore, contentfulness, this is called ontological contentfulness, a fundamental content, substance to something, is required for manifestation and existence itself. So anything that exists has some positive quality, even if it's just one quality, like blue, right? Or up or down. You know, these things it's a positive quality, something you can hold on to. Now, with all that said, we'll go to the other side, where we get to the good stuff. This is where we prove God exists. This is where we do the work, where people will either say, oh, that's quite profound, I never thought of it that way. And other people will say, I completely disagree with everything you're saying. So we'll see what side of the aisle you're on while you're watching this video. All right, so theorem 1. We have these 4 axioms in mind. Don't let them leave your consciousness, because I'll be referencing them consistently. Axiom 1, consciousness exists. Axiom 2, law of non-contradiction. Something can't exist and not exist. That's simple, right? Axiom 3, no circular grounding. Something has to be grounded in something self-evident or foundational, fundamental. Something can exist just by interacting with something else. They both have to have a ground, right? Again, daughter can't give birth to her mother, or a boy can't give birth to his mother, even less likely, but again, both impossible. And then 4, something has to have a positive content. You have to say something. To actually say, okay, I live in the United States. Okay, well, we've narrowed it down a little bit. Okay, now you've told me something. Or I live in a house. Or I live, Dr. Seuss with a cat in a hat. That's axiom 4. For any quality, character, qualitative aspect of something, X, with ontological character, the base from which X emerges must contain some X or 0X. This is A2. So it's either going to have some X, either X or not X. 0X, some X. Either or. Principle of exhaustive middle. Okay? If base contains 0X, X can't arise. You can't derive X from something that excludes X by definition. Law of non-contradiction. If you say something has none of something, and then you say at some point it produces that thing that it has nothing of, that's impossible because you've just said it has nothing from it, right? The words arises and emerge are no labels. They're just emerges. Might as well just say magic. You're just throwing a label on it. You're saying placebo. Big Bang. It's like, well, where'd it come from? It's like, Strong emergence is something coming from nothing. To really just make it so simple for you. Something coming from nothing is strong emergence. Big Bang, abiogenesis, life coming from not life. Consciousness emerging from the brain. Wow. It emerges. Was there any consciousness in the brain or in matter fundamentally? No. But at some point, when you get the complexity, put it together in a certain way, produces consciousness, this new fundamental substance that we have no idea how it came here. And we just start experiencing stuff and things have feeling and we feel sounds and we feel love and we feel hate and we're angry about things and we're experiencing all of these things. We're experiencing the world and through our senses, all this stuff is happening. But that is special to us in our brain or to living things wherever you draw the line, which is arbitrary. Because where do you draw the line? Everyone has a different line they're drawing. Because there's really no hard line if you think about it, if you really think about it. So if the base contains some X, it's weak emergence, like we said. Trees have forest has trees, right? Forest is always there, you just change your perspective. The front of the statue was always there, it didn't strongly emerge, it didn't magically come out of the back, right? The front was always there with the back. Conclusion, strong emergence, 0X to X, where genuinely novel ontological character emerges from a base that has 0 of it, is logically impossible. It's impossible, it can't happen. You're like, whoa, dude, it's aggressive. That's an aggressive statement I'm making. But again, this violates the law of non-contradiction, which is impossible for anything to violate the law of non-contradiction in principle, in the same respect, okay? So back to the pizza analogy, if you have 3 ingredients, you make your pizza at home, you got dough, you got sauce, you got cheese, you put it in the oven, you take it out, nothing's been added, it's still the same cheese pizza, and you fold it in half, and it starts talking to you, because it becomes conscious magically. That's strong emergence. That's impossible. If you fold it and then a baby pops out, that's strong emergence. You didn't put a baby in the base. There was no babies in the making in the process. You're not Epstein in this scenario, okay? It's a crazy reference I just made. You put no baby in the pizza, but when you cut the pizza or when you form it into the shape of a brain, a baby comes out or consciousness comes out or pepperonis start flying out at rapid speed. It doesn't really make sense. Now, some people will say, I've gotten this before, some people will say, well, wetness strongly emerges from water. And no, it does not. That's weak emergence because that's based off your perspective. Because they'll say, well, a water molecule is not wet, doesn't have wetness. And it's like, says who? Right? Okay, right? There's nothing being additionally added at the base. There's no new fundamental property being added. You have some oxygen molecules. You have some hydrogen molecules in water, but in one molecule of water, we'll say H2O, right? 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. Put them together, and it creates this water molecule. This new thing. But it's not fundamentally new because the base is still comprised of the same things that were put into it. Didn't produce a new ingredient. Strong emergence with water would be if you took 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom put them together, and then a helium atom came out of nowhere for no reason. But you never put a helium atom in there. So you just put these atoms together and they start popping out new atoms. Okay? Not big on my chemistry table, so I don't know all the elements, but you get the point, right? You don't know all the atom types. That's strong emergence. It makes no sense. You cannot track anything. The laws of physics doesn't make any sense then, because that means we can't track the mechanisms in a linear fashion. We have a gap in here where you put some stuff together and then this new thing comes out for no reason. We never see that. We never see that in nature. We never see that in science naturally. Ask a physicist friend, ask a PhD friend. Strong emergence is never seen. The only exception they have is for consciousness. For whatever reason, they've just said consciousness is the one exception, and the Big Bang and life. So those are the three big ones. Big Bang was something that came from nothing. Life came from non-life, even though there was no life in matter from their perspective. They say everything's dead, and then just life emerged for no reason. This new thing. And then consciousness just emerged for no reason from a thing that had none of it. Oy vey. It's quite popular for modern academia, but this impossible thing is being posited as a genuine, logically sound, coherent explanation for things. Theorem 2. So we've established that, if you've gotten this far in the video, you haven't clicked off out of anger, most likely you agree at strong emergence, that sounds ridiculous, right? If I make a 3-ingredient pizza and then a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th ingredient pops out that wasn't in the base, that's impossible. That would never happen. Theorem 2. Consciousness exists. Axiom 1. Consciousness can't emerge from non-consciousness. That's strong emergence, right? Look alive. Theorem 1. Therefore, consciousness is in the base. It's fundamental. It's in the ground. That's it. Right? If you put pepperoni in the pizza, it was in the mixture. It was in the ground, right? You put it in the crust or something. I don't know. Okay, if you see pepperoni, if pepperonis pop out while you're doing stuff to it, that means pepperonis are in it. If consciousness emerges weakly, in my opinion, weakly emerges from the brain in a certain formulation from your perspective, because it's based on your perspective, which is weak emergence. It's not saying that it was never there. It's just you didn't see it before, you didn't perceive it before based off your own limited perspective. It was always there. You just couldn't perceive it for whatever reason. So consciousness is fundamental. It's in everything, right? Just because you don't perceive something as conscious doesn't mean that there's not some level or amount of consciousness in it. It's just a gradation. Because where do you draw the line? Do you draw the line at humans, at dogs, at animals, at pets, plants, amoebas, rocks? Where do you draw the line? There is no, lines are arbitrary. Okay? And I know what you're thinking immediately, like, well, rocks aren't conscious. Rocks aren't part of life. Rocks aren't alive. Well, if you really think about it, what if you ate a rock? Not the country, the thing. What if you ate it and you broke it down in your stomach and it became minerals? You got calcium in your blood. Is the minerals in your blood not part of life? Dead? Are the minerals not conscious? If you cut off your hand, does it stop being conscious? Right? What about the food you eat? Is that part of consciousness now? If you were to eat dead matter? Where is the line? That is the question to ask yourself. Now, I don't believe there's any line, but that's me, and I'm here to continuously convince you of this fact as we continue on. Theorem 3. Assume two fundamental substances, mind and matter. Assume that there are two substances, right? And everyone just says there's mind and there's matter. There's consciousness, conventionally speaking, in academia, in science, materialist, physicalist frameworks. There's matter, or there's patterns, physical processes, things going on, interactions. And then there's this consciousness thing that's like, so annoying. What is it? Why is it here? I don't get it. Why are we experiencing things? Why do we have subjective experience? Why do we have love, hate, why do we have these experiences that are going on, these qualities? So you have mind and matter in this scenario, two substances. Two substances must coexist. So what contains them, right? You have two substances. You have mind and matter. One of the two substances contains the other, which is monism. Either everything is matter and consciousness is a type of matter, or everything is consciousness and matter is a type of consciousness. Right? You have that. That's monism. That's what I'm arguing. A third thing that is described only by what it is not, null label and strong emergence. So some people will say, well, there's a base, but it's not matter, it's not mind, or it's not consciousness. It's not consciousness, it's not physical processes. It's not either those two. And I say, well, what is it, kind sir? And they say, I just know it's not those two things. I'm like, well, how do you know it's not those two things? And they say, you haven't said anything. Axiom 4, null label. And strong emergence, because you're saying this thing that has no matter in it, no consciousness in it, no mind or matter, or physical processes, right? Neither of those things are in the base, and you haven't even named it. So you get this strong emergence, and you haven't named it. You haven't said anything. You haven't taken any steps forward. You've just said, nuh-uh. I'm not listening to that. All right, we're not playing that game. So T1 and Axiom 4 violated with that one. That's extra bad. Nothing. You say, oh, nothing. Well, same thing as a third thing that's neither of those things. Oh, nothing is it. Well, strong emergence or null label. Now, some astute intellectuals might say that both are fundamental, right? Matter is not mind is not matter. They just exist. That's a brute fact. I have two brute facts. Two things are not grounded in anything. They're just interacting. Well, that violates Axiom 3, as we said before, right? It's like two people trying to ground each other while they're in the void of space with nothing around. So you've just said essentially that matter and mind are just two things that just exist. The question becomes, how do they interact? If they're completely distinct from each other, they have neither of the same qualities in them, how are they interacting with each other? Spinoza already approached that. You can look up Spinoza monism or Spinoza one substance argument. He already deads dualism himself, but I wanted to do it my own way. Not copy his steez, not copy his wave, my own little philosophical motion, if you will. So, but they must be distinct in ways which are determinate fact. This needs grounding, A3, a shared context. Now, again, someone can say, no, they don't need a container, they don't need a shared context. Well, then I say, well, how do you know that they're distinct? And you say, well, there's two things. Well, then two is math. So the context is math. And also your mind, you're holding it in your consciousness if you're thinking about those two distinct things, mind and matter. So either the container is your mind, your consciousness, your personal consciousness, or it's math. Either way, for me, I would say consciousness, right? That's my argument that I'm logically forcing right now through this process. Someone could also say, oh, it's math. Math is the foundation. Math is the container for these two things. So that's the one substance. Either way, you're getting one substance. Math can be the one substance. Consciousness can be the one substance. Or mind or matter can be the one substance. It's got to be one of those four things, okay? Or three things, mind, matter, or math, because again, if you say two, my apologies. My math got wrong. Okay, so we got no strong emergence, so that means we got consciousness in the base. We have one substance, no dualism, no splits, no distinct things, because no hard boundaries. It's got to be one thing, everything's part of the same thing. Not saying that there isn't real differentiations or divisions or derivatives or fractals, things being distinct from other things. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they're all contained in one thing. They're all part of one same unit. Just like how you can have a family unit, family is one thing as a concept, and you can have distinct individual things within that context. You can have an entire universe is the one thing, and then you have galaxies and suns and you and me and this crazy world we live in right now during this political climate and all the absolute craziness being released through disclosure in many different ways. So now we have theorem 4. There is one substance. We established that in theorem 3. Consciousness is fundamental, theorem 2. If neither purely mind or matter, if this substance is not neither purely mind or matter, the substance must have some distinct inherent nature. It can be structural and physical, but if it's just structural, physical, you get strong emergence, experience from non-experience. If that's how you define structure, right? Just structure. You're saying there's no consciousness in the structure or physical ground, physical reality, patterns. There's nothing, no consciousness in it. Only certain things produce consciousness. If you're saying that, well, then you get experience from non-experience. Consciousness is arising, strong emergence. Can't do that. If you say there's some experience, it's experiential, well, conscious substrate monism, my philosophy, my ontology, what we're arguing here, right? You could also say its nature is neither, which would be null label strong emergence. Axiom 4, theorem 1. Wow. Look how easy this is. You would think that it would be more complicated, but it really doesn't have to be this difficult. You just follow the logic wherever it leads. And you remain consistent, which can be difficult for some people because of dogma and ideas and misconceptions and intellectualizing things above what they need to be intellectualized about. Conclusion. There is one conscious substrate. So that there's one substance, it's conscious in the base of that one substance. Corollary 4.1. So some people might say, okay, well, this is all well and good. You're doing your cute little logic thing. You know, you're saying that you know these things logically, but just because you know something logically to be true does not mean that it's fundamentally true. So they would make a distinction between epistemology and ontology. Epistemology is what we know, right? This is epistemology, what we're doing right now. But we're doing epistemology about ontology, which is being, more metaphysical. Okay? But if you draw a clear line, we're saying what we know cannot actually reach what is actually true fundamentally about being, meaning our knowledge can't access the true foundation, fundamental foundation of being and existence and the universe and creation. If that's your argument, well, then that introduces separation, which is dualism. We already can't do dualism. And strong emergence, because you're saying epistemology is a completely distinct thing from ontology, and it came out of it later at some point. I'm saying, no. Ontology is the positive content. A4, it's positive content. And epistemology is a constrained version of it. So knowing is being in its constrained, more finite form. All right, just like consciousness. Matter is consciousness, just in its finite, constrained form. All right? It's not bottom up. People thinking, I know you're thinking in your mind, okay, well, matter's in the base, and there's consciousness in the base, but isn't that panpsychism? Isn't that what he's arguing? Then you have the combination problem. No, that's not what I'm arguing. I'm arguing that everything is consciousness, and different finite forms are derivatives or fractals, like ocean. You have the ocean, one substance, one thing, and then each thing you're seeing, each distinct thing is like a wave or a whirlpool or a drop of water, okay? So it's all part of the same thing, just in different modes, apertures, constraints. There's no true hard ontological lines. It is based off your limited perspective. Give you even a simple example. You see the color spectrum. Some people are colorblind. Some people are blind. Some people can see the full color spectrum in 4K. My girlfriend being one of them. It's amazing eyesight, very sharp. So the distinctions, the transition from different colors across the spectrum, the light spectrum, will vary depending on the person. Now there will be 99.99% of people will say, okay, well, like white is not black. That's the hard. But for some people who are very colorblind, maybe that's the only distinction they can see. I don't really know how colorblindness works, but you get the point. Some people will see different lines. It's arbitrary. There's no concrete distinction. Depends on how you're looking at it and what lens you're using. Okay? Theorem 5. There is only one substance, as we established in Theorem 3. If the substrate or substance were bounded, something must define the limit. A4. So if there's a boundary, you're saying, okay, this one substance that's conscious, there's got to be something that bounds it. But if something's binding it, suppressing it, limiting it, that thing has to have some positive content. Okay? Based off of axiom 4. To be a determinate thing, it has to have something. You have to give it a label or something. That which bounds it is either, because A2, exhaustive middle, part of the substrate. So the thing that bounds it is part of the substrate, part of the one substance itself, the one conscious substrate. The substrate extends further, so then it wasn't bounded. It was only being bounded by itself, but that means it's extending further. It's still the same one substance. It just might be perceived as bounded from a finite perspective. Weak emergence. Something other than the substrate is binding it. Something with positive content is constraining it, limiting it from expanding further. Violates monism. That's dualism. Okay. And it also would be strong emergence, because then how did our universe, right? Our one substance come from that thing that's actually containing it. You're just explaining the same thing, but just further. No matter how far you go, it's still the one substance, still the one substance. Okay. Otherwise, you get dualism, which we've already refuted. I already said that. Nothing limits the substrate logically. So nothing limits the substrate's logical possibilities of manifestation. No logical possibilities are excluded. This is modal and ontological, not spatial, temporal, as I said before. What are the logical possibilities? The 4 axioms. As long as something abides by those 4 axioms, it can exist. If it violates those 4 axioms, it cannot exist by definition. That's simple. Truly effortless, if you think about it, if you allow your mind to open up to the process. One unified conscious substrate is infinite. That's how we get to this point. And a question obviously arises, which is, all right, well, that's all well and good. Well, then why would an infinite conscious substance that is whole and complete differentiate itself into many different distinct things? Why do we exist? What's the point? Why would it do that? What was the point? What was the purpose? And I personally believe that question is malformed, because to have a purpose, to have a goal, to have a reason, there must be something external to yourself, right? A goal, a purpose, a reason is something that you're moving towards because you don't have it. But if you're the one infinite conscious substance, you have everything, you are everything, you are everything. You don't even have everything, you are everything. There's nothing external to you to strive for. So the only coherent explanation is just, it is nature. It is the nature of this substrate to expand and differentiate logically. And how do we determine if something logically persists is 4 axioms. Logos, what I call logos, is those 4 axioms. Okay? That's how something can persist, because if it violates those 4 axioms, it cannot exist as a distinct thing at all. Period. And then finally, we get to theorem 6, because this is the catalyst that leads to that differentiation process, which allows for logos to do its thing, that allows for awareness to become a distinct thing, right? To manifest into concrete things. Consciousness has content because it exists, right? It's required to exist. Axiom 1 and axiom 4. Humans exhibit intention and will. Denying intention is an act of intention, distinguishing itself from negation. Axiom 2. The claim intention is illusory requires you to mean something by it. Intentional directedness. So when I'm saying intentional, I'm saying the directedness. Something is directed, right? I'm intentionally reading something. I'm intentionally talking. There is intention when you do something with directedness. You're directing something happening. Now, some people may argue, I'm individually not intentionally doing something. It's the universe or whatever. And honestly, I would agree. I just don't think it's random, because random would be unintentional. Random would be unconscious. By the very fact of you saying, oh, intention is not really real or whatever, denying intention is you are in the process of doing that intentionally. Maybe not even you, but there was intention behind that statement, whether it's started with you or started with something higher, which is my belief. You'll see that in a second. If the substrate had 0 intention, the appearance of intentionality is strong emergence. Substrate is inherently intentional. Human intention is a finite, constrained mode of God's intention. So to really lock that in, meaning if we can't have strong emergence from T1, all of the characteristics, but we'll start with intention. If we see intention in humans, well, it's got to be part of God. It's got to be part of the all, the one substance, Brahman, Allah, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. I'm just giving you the basic qualities, whatever you want to call it. The universe, great spirit, right? There's so many different names. The Tao, right? So the one true creator, that, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same thing, in my opinion. I don't discriminate. Okay? So the substrate is inherently intentional. So we see intentionality in the way humans move. Intentionality didn't magically come out of us for no reason. You didn't make a little human and then say, oh, intentionality just magically emerged, right? Pepperoni's coming out of a pizza because you folded it the right way or because you cut a certain piece. No, pepperonis were in the base. Intention was in the base. Or actually, our intention is a derivative of. So this is not a combination thing. This is not like matter is combining, consciousness is combining to make one unified thing. It is everything as one substance, like an ocean. And then a wave is a differentiation, a mode, an aperture, a constraint of that greater one substance that is infinite, that is conscious, that is intentional. And each manifestation, individual directed manifestation that operates through logos, through logic, to manifest as a distinct thing, is intentional. All in the venue of consciousness. Consciousness is the experience. You have awareness, you have logic, logos, together, it's experience, it's consciousness. And awareness and logos are two sides of the same coin. So I'm not saying dualism, I'm not saying they're distinct inherently. It is just the way that our finite minds perceive things, because our finite intellect can only really perceive things by dissecting it. Can't conceptualize the whole fully. We can logically point to it, which is what I'm doing. You can directly experience it. This is what the yogis do. This is what Eastern traditions do. They teach you these scientific framework, step-by-step processes to directly experience the infinite conscious substrate, God, higher power, whatever you want to call it, Brahman. Where I'm using logic. So you don't have to meditate for 20 years to directly experiencing it, to know it exists, confidently know it exists. It does exist because it's logically forced. It's logically impossible that it doesn't exist, okay? And the last thing is you can kind of take from this intentionality standpoint is, all apparent opposites in existence are a spectrum of one thing at different degrees of constraint. Axiom 4, right? We start with the positive content, then you identify the positive pole, the default, which is the default, and the other end is the privation, no dualism and no strong emergence. It's got to be the same thing. There's no hard lines. Two simple examples of this is light and heat. Darkness is not a type of light. Darkness is the absence of light or the blocking of light. To make something dark, you do not add dark particles. There's no dark particles. You take away photons or you block photons. It's less light. Same thing with heat. It's all heat. Cold is just less heat. You take away motion or vibration of these atoms, these particles, to create less heat. And both of those things, with all things, you cannot reach absolute zero. You cannot reach absolute zero dark. There's always light in the field, whether you can see it with your eyes or not, because our visible light spectrum is very narrow. And you cannot get to absolute cold, absolute zero cold. You can get really close. You can get really close to absolute dark, but that means it wouldn't exist. So you can never get to absolute zero of anything. And so that sliding scale. So intention, what would be the polar opposite? Let's say apathy or indifference. Let's say indifference. Indifference or apathy. Apathy, indifference is not its own unique thing, separate thing, distinct thing. It is less of the default, which is intention. Love, let's say the opposite is hatred. Hatred is not its own thing. It is less love. Gradation sliding scale. And it depends on the perspective or when that hate becomes love. When that love becomes hate. When hot becomes cold depends on your perspective. From a silicon-based quantum computer, absolute zero is perfect. But to one of us, death. It's way too cold, right? Our temperature, I like it 80 degrees. I think that's perfect. I don't think that's hot. I think that's great. To a quantum silicon computer like that, or just computers in general, it's tougher. It's tougher on the body, tougher on the operations, okay? So it's all based off your perspective, because this is all about being finite apertures within a unified substrate, unified whole, with degrees of constraint and restriction. So everything's conscious, but not everything is experiencing things in the exact same way, okay? That is the key distinction that needs to be understood. Now, that's the full introduction to the proof. There's more to it, and I'm going to provide a link down below if you want to get the full PDF to go through it step by step, and to have there's more theorems that I added, and there's more corollaries, and I've already addressed many of the possible potential objections that people are going to have. But I'm aware that this is not exhaustive. This is not fully explaining all of the things in a way that makes complete and utter sense to everybody. There's always going to be somebody who's a little confused or who's vehemently denying whatever I'm saying. And if you feel strongly about it, either or, you want to know something, you agree, or you want to tell me that I'm being arrogant and completely wrong for many different reasons, please comment down below and I'll do my best to respond. And this should be fun.